Hey guys, my name is Victor. In this video we will create a simple app in Angular which is gonna fetch an API's data. This video requires basic knowledge of HTML, CSS and JavaScript, and it's a tutorial for beginner developers who are trying to get started with Angular. I just wanted to mention one thing, that I don't have much experience with Angular, and I apologize if I'm gonna be wrong on certain definitions along the way. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for my channel, and let's go ahead and get started.
So here's the demo, guys. With the design is not very professional, as you already see, but the main focus was on the functionality. So we have three components right now in this app. The main one is the app component, which is being generated by Angular by default, and then we have home component and API component. We will generate these two other components using the command line, and we will use routes to kind of like load these components into like a new page. Okay, so this menu bar comes from the app component. I just typed in the CSS there in the HTML, and then in our home component we have this content, which is saying welcome to my Angular app, view the user list by clicking on the button below. And we have this button here. Now if I click on this button, it's gonna go to the API data route. So we click there, and here's gonna be, so it opens a new page. The URL is also changing to /API. Here we get all this data from an API, which is randomapi.com, and each time we load it, it loads random user list. So here we have first name, last name, and the amount of money. All right. So yes, that's been. Let's go ahead and get started. I am gonna create a new. Before we actually get started, just make sure if you haven't worked before with Node.js or and you don't have it installed, make sure you have it installed. So to check that, just open your command line and type in node space -b, and this one should show you the version you have installed, your Node.js version. And you also need the npm. So usually whenever you install Node.js, it comes with the name npm, but just make sure you have it too. So type in npm space -b, npm space -b, and this should show your npm version. So if it shows, then that's fine. If it doesn't, you may want to go to Google and search for Node download, and their official website is nodejs.org. Click here, choose your operational system, install it, and make sure it has npm too. And then after that, we want to, if you haven't worked with Angular before, you want to install Angular too. So just type in npm install -g, which means globally, and then add angular/CLI, and this is gonna install Angular on your machine. After you did that, we can create a new Angular app, and this the command line for this one is ng new my app, and instead of my app you can put just choose a name for your app. In my case, I'm gonna use Angular demo app, and I'm also using I'm on Windows, but I'm using a different command line, so I have to put sudo in front of my command because this is not gonna give me permission to install new app. You don't have to put this sudo in front of it if you use your native command line. Alright, so after that, I just press enter. This is gonna ask me for a password just because I'm using sudo. You will not see that. You will not have to insert any password. Alright, I entered my password. This is actually, and then here is asking, would you like to add Angular routing? And we press Y and enter. And here's gonna ask us for which style sheet format would we like to use. So let's pick SCSS. press enter, and this is gonna take a while, so I'm just gonna pause the video, guys, and I will resume it whenever it's done. Alright, so this is done. Now I'm gonna open my folder, and I'm gonna open my VS Code in this folder. I really like this VS Code because it has a lot of stuff useful for developers and things like that. Okay, so I have this one here. Let's take a look at the structure. We have the node modules. If you work with React before, you know that there's node modules folder 2. This is folder with we're not gonna use this folder. So the main folder we will be working in is the source, right? We have the source folder right here, and as I already told you in the demo, there's an app component. So here are gonna be all the components. So by default we have app component, and each component has a HTML template, like you see app.component.html. And if we take a look here, this is the HTML from the home page, and they also have the CSS, which is the styling for this component, and then TypeScript, which is this one, TypeScript. Here we type in, we add functionality, and they also have modules. We will not touch on all of this in this tutorial. It's just because it's just a simple example. But let's start our server. Let's start our app, and to do that, we should type in a command, which is ng serve -o, and this is gonna compile everything we have in our app, and it's gonna open up a new tab in our browser, and then whenever we save the changes from our VS Code, the app is gonna reload automatically. And this is gonna take a while too, because my laptop is kind of slow, and there's like this Angular, it's also huge, so alright, I guess I'm gonna just pause the video, guys. Okay, so it opened up a new tab, and we see localhost 4200, and this is how it looks like right now. It's saying compiled successfully, and I'm gonna open now my VS Code from here, and let's go to our app component. Let's open the app.component.html. So this is the HTML we have on our page right now. This is the one from this main page. So I'm just gonna remove everything from here except this tag, which is router-outlet. I'm gonna leave this for now because this is like it's like a div ID root from React if you work before with React. If not, then this is how this Angular app knows where to output the app components content on the page. Alright, so let's type in here something like hi, I'm a developer. Super simple, but just to show you that this works. So we get hi, I'm a developer, and we didn't have to load the page. Okay, so I'm gonna add here some HTML styling. I want to add that menu bar from here. That's the previous tab, so I didn't close it, but I want to create this kind of like orange menu bar from the top in our app. So to do that, let's go on our app.component.html, and let's add a header tag, and then here we will have a container. So we have div class container, and then in this div class container we will have a link to the home page. So we'll have a link, and this is gonna go nowhere, and then the class it's gonna be logo, and the text is gonna be Angular app. And then below in the container we will have a navigation tag like this, and then here we will have a list, and here we'll have the first item from our menu, which is gonna be a link, and it's not gonna go anywhere, but we will use router link. This is an Angular tag, and this is gonna go to the home page, the main page. And then we will have another item on our menu, which is gonna be for the API data. Actually, I forgot to add here home in our URL, and this is gonna be API data, and the route it's gonna be API. And now having this in place, I'm gonna wrap these tags router outlet with a container div class. So container div class, alright, like this. And let's save it now. Let's go back and take a look. So we see we have it's not beautiful because we didn't add any styling. Now to add a styling, we should go to app.component.scss, and here is where we add all the styling for our home for our app.component app component. And we're using Sass, so to do that we'll have to actually let's do this from the main CSS file. Yeah, so if we close app folder, there is a style, it should be a styles.css. It's a main CSS style, which is it's like a global CSS file. So let's open this one and let's add the CSS styling for this app component into this file. But you can do it from this file as well, which is app.component.scss. Alright, let's do this. So there's gonna be a variable, a Sass variable, which is gonna be primary color, and the primary color is gonna be EE8208, which is the orange. And then we will have body, and this one is gonna have margin, let's say 0, and then we will have font family, sans serif, like this, and then we will have the font size. It's gonna be 18 pixels, and then below we'll have the container class, and this is gonna have width 80%, and then margin is gonna be 0 auto, so we just center it in the middle of the page, to this, like we center it. And then we have this header, header section, and here we have background, and we use the primary color variable for that. And then we have padding, which is 1em0, and then within the same curly brackets we have links, so all the URLs for our header section. So we have here a, and then here the color is gonna be white. Okay, we will have text decoration, it's gonna be none, and then we want to add little styling for our logo URLs. So we have a.logo, and then here we have font weight, it's gonna be bold, and that's all we add for this one. Next, we want to add some styling for the navigation, so we have nav, and here we'll have our list. If you remember, from here we have nav, and then we have the list, and then the items. So here we have nav and float right, and then within the nav we have the UL list and list style type. List style type, it's gonna be none, and here we want to add margin 0 and also display flex, and we want to actually within this list we want to add the styling for URLs from item URLs from the li tag. All right, and we will do that here, lia, and here we add padding 1 em, and we want to add hover. Whenever we hover over the URLs, we want to add a darkened background. So we have here and hover, and here we have the background which is darken, and here we add our variable which is the primary color, and let's put 10% here. Okay, now I would like to add another global some global styling to the h1 tag. So this is what I'm gonna type in here, h1 margin, margin top, I'll put 2 em. Okay, now I'm gonna save it and I'm gonna take a look here. So here we go. Actually, there's a problem here. We have an error. I mean, a styling, something wrong here. Okay, let's see. We have our header a, so we've got the color, and then a dot logo. This is the navigation, ul list style none, margin 0, display flex, and then li a padding 1 em, hover, background, darken. Okay, this is kind of weird, but I probably did something wrong here. Okay, so this needs to be within this li, so this curly break needs to be here. Now it should work. There you go, so it works now. You know, these links don't work. This one may work, but this also doesn't work. It's just because we didn't we didn't create the components for all these links for these routes. And to do that, we have to use another command line. So that's why I like to use this one, the VS Code, because it has this. I can open terminals here, so I'm gonna open a new terminal, and I'm gonna type in here sudo. You don't have to type in sudo, you can skip it, but I'm typing just because I'm using a different Ubuntu. I'm using Ubuntu on Windows, and that's why I have this user. I have to use sudo because this is gonna give me full permissions. Okay, so we have ng generate service component. Actually, this C means component, and then we have home. So I'll press enter. This is asking for my admin password, and this is gonna generate a new folder, which is gonna be like, if you see here within the app folder, there's a new home folder, which is another component, and they have, like, this folder has the HTML template for the component, Sass, SCSS styling, and then the TypeScript. All right, and then here I want to create another component for API. So I'll type in API like this. Okay, so I have the API and the home. I'm gonna close this for now. All right, let's go back. Gonna refresh this. It still doesn't work yet. Okay, so let's go ahead to Let's go ahead and add the routing into our app. Should be app routing app routing.modules.ts, and we have to add the routings here. And in this array, where's the routes? So to do that, we'll have to import them first. So to import them, we should type in import, and we have here home. Like this home, it's the name of your component, so make sure it matches with this name from here. All right, home, and then home component. All right, and then from, and here we have dot slash home component, and we want to do the same thing for the API, so we will have API component, and we get API from API slash API component. Now, having this one imported here, we can add now we can add this routes to the routes object. That there's an array actually here. So let's say like this. The first one is gonna be it's gonna have a path, and the path is gonna be empty. And here we assign to the empty path, we assign the home component. So whenever this path from here is empty, the home component needs to be loaded here on the home, like the first page. So that's what we do here. We have the path and component, and here we have home component, and we have another component, but this one is API and has the API path. So we type in here API component, API component, like this. Alright, let's save it. Let's go back. We see the app is loading, and we already see the home works. And if we click on API data, it's saying the API works. Now, where is all this data coming from, right? Like, where is this coming from? It's actually coming from these folders from our component. So if you open, for example, home and then home component HTML, you will see it here. Home works and API, same thing. Now let's add the content to our home component. So I'm just gonna get rid of this one because we don't need it anymore. This style file T, I'm gonna close it. App component, I'm gonna close this one as well because we won't do any changes there. So having this one HTML template for our home component, I'm gonna add here a class, which is gonna be container class. This container class is in our styles.scss file, which is a global style. So that's from where it gets the styling in this one. And then we have h1 tag, and we say welcome to my Angular app. And then we have a paragraph which is saying view the user list by clicking on the button below, like this. And then below here we will have a button, and this is gonna go the href. It's not gonna go anywhere, but we will have a router link. So we have router link, and this is gonna be API, and we will have a class which is gonna be view list, and the text is gonna be view list, view user list. We can put like this, view user list. I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna go back to the page, and we see this one on the home page, but of course we should add some styling to the home component as CSS. So let's open this file and let's add here some styling. We want to add styling for h1 and for the paragraph tag, which is text align center. We want to align all the content to the center, and there's gonna be a separate styling for the paragraph, which is gonna have the font size 20 pixel, and then we will also have the styling for view list button for this one. So we have view list. I'll make sure I don't misspell it. All right, and here we have padding 10 pixels, and then box sizing, border box, and then we have display table, and we have width auto, and we have text align center, and then we have border, which is 1 pixel solid, and DDD, which is gonna make it a little darker. And then we have border radius, so we have border radius of 0.25 em, and we also have box shadow, and here we have 0, 1 pixel, 2 pixel, RGBA, and here we have 0, 0, 0, 0, ups 0.1, like this. Alright, and then we have color, which is white, and then we have font weight bold, and then we have the background, which is 65 CA19, which is like a light green. I really like this color. And then we have margin 0 and auto, so we just center this button as well. And then here below we have our container class. Of course we get some styling from the global style file, but here we want to add some styling to the URLs from this class, from this block. So we have here a, and we have text decoration none, and we also have the hover, and here has a background of 52 A911, which is a darker green. Okay, let's save it. Let's go back. The page is gonna reload, so we see the styling here. All the content is aligned. Now if I click on view user list, it goes to the API router, which is like a separate page, and here we have API works. Right, now what we should do is we should create the API data functionality, so we should call an API. Now in order to do that, there's a website which is called randomapi.com. Alright, go on this website, and what I did, I scrolled down, and here's a button which is saying call this API directly. So I clicked on it, and it opened up a new tab which has all this data like a user list. And I also remove from here the everything that's after this session, from the question mark to the end. I remove all that stuff from there, and I get an API with a session. So I copy this stuff from here. You can use any kind of API you want, but like for this example I'm using this one because it's easier to work with. Right, I'll leave this open like this until we build the functionality for our API. So now in order to use the HTTP, like to call APIs, we have to install a new, like another service, which is we should install the HTTP service to call the API. So to do that, I'm gonna type in sudo, and here I'm gonna have ng generate, which is G is from generate, S from service, and I'll type in here HTTP. I'll press enter, and this is gonna ask for my password. So this now it's gonna install HTTP package, and it created two new files. If you see them here, one is the http.service.ts and the other one is service.spec.ts. Now what we should do is open this http service.ts. Let's see here, and we have here we should import the HTTP client here. So I'll just give you a simple example, but in our HTTP service TS, let's import the HTTP client. So we have import HTTP client from actually Angular. So we have at Angular / common / HTTP like this, and then we have to reference this HTTP client in the constructor in here. So we will have to add like kind of like a parameter to our constructor, and to do that we will type in private, and we have HTTP, and we have HTTP client like this. Now below here we want to create a new method, and I'm gonna make it super simple just to show you how it works. So let's say get API data, and here we will have this method which is gonna return a console log, and it's gonna say I'm the API data. Alright, I will save it, and now what we want to do is we want to call this HTTP service, we want to call this one into our API component. So let's open our API component, and we have this api.component.typescript, and we should import that file in here. Let's see how we can do that. So let's see. Alright, so here we call the client. Now in our API component we should call the service. Right, and to do that we should import it. First of all, import HTTP service from http.service like this, and then of course we should reference it. So we have to add it here as a constructor the same way we did for the service, HTTP service. So to do that we'll type in private, and here we have underscore HTTP, and then we have HTTP service like this. The name from here needs to match this one from here. And then after that, this is the main ng on init. This is like a life cycle event, or like a life cycle method which runs. It's like render function from React, but it's called ng on init. And here we add the functionality, and let's say we want to add, let's say here we want to add actually I was wrong on this one, guys. Let's see what's gonna happen. I'm gonna leave this one here like this. I'll just comment this out, and here I'm gonna put, so what we did here, we imported HTTP client into our service, HTTP service. We referenced it in our constructor. Okay, this method from here we're just gonna leave it here for now. Let's see, I'm gonna uncomment it, and I'm gonna call it in our, so let's save it, let's leave it like how it was before, and let's call it from our lifecycle from here. But this one needs to be like this. It should have this dot HTTP, and then we have dot get API data. So it's kind of like we call this method from our HTTP service. Right, let's save it now. Let's go back. This app needs to be refreshed. It's gonna refresh. Okay, if we click on view API data, in our console we have an error, and this error it's because we didn't call this component in our app component, so this needs to be called in the app component as well. So let's go back to our app. Let's close this one, let's close this one, and where we have app component, this is a good thing. I cannot see what we have here. We should open the app module TypeScript here, and then we should import here the HTTP client module, but that's what I forgot to add. So let's type in import, and we have HTTP client module from angular / we have common / HTTP, like this. Okay, so I have angular common HTTP client module, and then after that we should copy this one and paste it to into our imports, like here, like this. And now if we save it and if we go back, the page is gonna reload. Let's open our console. Alright, and now if I click on view user list, we get I am the API data in the console log. So okay, so we connected the API component to the app component, and now we can go ahead and create a functionality to call our API. And to do that, we should go back to, I'm gonna close this one, I'm gonna close the app component HTML2 API component, so I'm gonna leave this one open, and then this one too. So where we have the home component CSS, I'm gonna close that. Home component HTML, I'm gonna close this one. So here's what we have. This is where we call our API. And alright, to do that, we should return. We'll actually use this client we just imported. So we will do like this. This dot HTTP dot get, and here's where the API data, like where the API URL comes. So let's copy this URL from here and let's paste it right here, like this. Let's save it, and now let's go back, and let's go back, and here we have to, like, if we pay attention to our API, we have an object. Right, first is an object, and then there is a results kind of like step in our object, was like a property, and then this result has another like array, and then another object of it's like an array of objects, and each user data is into an object, so we have to access all this data through all these steps. And to do that, we will have to type it. I'm gonna close this, I don't need it. So to do that, wherever we have wherever we call this method, we will have to change it a little bit, and here we have to add dot subscribe. This is a Angular, it's a predefined function, we get subscribe, and then here we have data and curly brackets, and then here we have these dot users. Actually, we also have to mention the type of data we will assign to our object, because we will have to have an object to which we will assign the whole data from our API. So here we will have users object, and this is gonna be object. All right, this is important to do it here like this. And then in our ng on init, we assign to this object the data from our API. So we have data, data results, and here we have 0, because as I already told you, we have the results, and then there's another array which has just one position, which is 0, and in this 0 position we have all these objects for each user's object. So that's what we have. Users, there's something is wrong here. So we have this HTTP get API, subscribe data. Oh, it's because it doesn't match with the object, so it needs to match. Alright, it matched it. Here we're fetching the data. Now in our API content HTML, we have to change it here a little bit too. And let's see, we should remove everything from here, and we should add an h1 tag, which is gonna be user list, and then below here we will have a ul, it's gonna be a list, and we will have a class. This is gonna have a class. Actually, before we do that, let me just show you how it works. Okay, this is another cool stuff we didn't use in this video yet, which is the asterisks ng if equal to users. So this is checking if this variable has any data, then this whole thing from this block is gonna load. So if there's any data in our users object, then this whole content from our list is gonna load. So we have li, and here we have kind of like a for each loop, but it's not a for each loop, it's ng4 like this. And here we have let user of users. So this is mapping through our object of users from here, and it's pulling the data, it's fetching the data for each user. So here we have a paragraph, and this is gonna be and we're gonna using the interpolation to output the data like this. So we have user dot first and first name. What else do they have there in the API? So there's the first, last, and balance. Okay, let's do that. So we have first, last, and balance. Okay, let's save it. Let's go back and see what's going on here. So we see that we have the user list. Oops, I should leave a space here like this. We have the user list, and we get all this data from the API, but we should style it a little bit so it doesn't look that ugly. And let's go ahead and add a class here to our ul class, and this is gonna be user list, and then we will add another class for our li tag, which is gonna be user item like this. Let's save it. Let's go back to let's open our api.component.scss, and here's where we add the styling for our API component. So basically here we just have two classes, which is the user list and this one has the padding 0, and then we have another class which is user item, and this one has width 100%, padding 15 pixel, and then we have display block, and we have margin which is on top 0, on the side 0, just on the bottom 10 pixel, and then we have background color which is DDD, oops, like this. Let's save it, and now let's go back to our app and let's see what we've got. So we have a little bit of styling now. I mean, it's not the best styling in the world, but still, like, we can see the difference and we can break these users down. Actually, there's an error somewhere here, last user. I misspelled the first. You probably saw it already, guys. Okay, so we have the first name, last name, and the balance. And now if I click on home, it goes to the home page without loading a new page. If I click on API, it goes to the API page without loading the whole app. And if I click now on Angular app, it's gonna reload the whole app because I didn't add a route link to that to the specific area, because it's just logo. It's like instead of logo. So that's it, guys, for this video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment. There is gonna be the link to the source code in the description. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for my channel, and I will see you in the next tutorial.